Hello, welcome to the Under Center podcast. I'm your host, Darmar, and I'm joined by two stars of the classic movie reboot, Hear No Evil, See No Evil, Jake Woolhead and Fionn Malloy. Fionn, I know without your glasses you are pretty much blind, so you have that character down. So, Jake, I'm guessing you are going to be deaf for this coming film.
Yeah, I always say to people that they should be
How
deaf
did you not do
listening
the
to
classic
me.
dad joke and just go, what?
I was going on to a different joke. Come on, let me have this one. I always say people need to be deaf listening to me because I'm not a radio voice like our guest here says.
Thank you. I'm trying.
Well, I was going to say people are deaf listening to you because all you can do is talk about terrible takes on the Giants. But look, we'll see. And Fionn, you just can't see how bad of a quarterback you're going to have next year. Too. So here we go. So, but listen, we have another good show in store for you guys today. We are continuing our off-season series, and it is the turn of the LA Rams. And on the show today, we have host of the Locked On Rams podcast, Sosa Kremenjas. Sosa, how are you today?
You banged it. This is a good start. I like where we're headed here. Suddenly, my day's a little bit better. We had a little bit of chatting pre-taping here, and I'll say this is already one of the funnest appearances I've made over my course of the last couple of years. I'll say that.
We like to pride ourselves in making sure that all of our guests feel right at home coming on before the show, whether we are talking complete gibberish or not.
That's right in my wheelhouse right there.
All we have to do is prove to you in the next 20 to 30 minutes that we actually know a thing or two about football over here, and then we'll just be happy.
You guys don't have to convince me, man. I'm not in the U.S. either, so I think they might be a little bit hard-headed there, but we got some football knowledge. I'll say that, man. Everywhere in this world.
Definitely, for sure. But before we actually do talk about the LA Rams, guys, if you are watching us on YouTube, make sure you do like this video and subscribe to the Under Center podcast on YouTube. That is where you will find our show each and every time you upload a new one. Also, if you don't have time to watch the full shows, we do release the shows in clips, so you get the best parts of the shows there in nice bite-sized chunks, so you can see them there if you don't have the time to watch the full show. Also, we are on the audio side of things. If you prefer to listen to your podcast on the go, just go to wherever you get your podcast, search Under Center Podcast. You'll find us there. We release the exact same content on there too. While you're at it, go to our facebook.com/undercenterpod. Instagram and Twitter are both the same. Just go at Under Center Pod. That's where you'll find us, and that's where you'll be kept up to date for the latest show releases and the latest news. And also, you'll be really helping us out because we are on the quest for 1,000 followers on Instagram and Twitter. We are at 250 there, maybe a little less last time I checked away from that. We want to get there before week 1 of the regular season, so make sure if you haven't followed us yet, go over there and do that after you've listened, of course, to the show. But look, listen, we're here for the real business, and that is to talk about the LA Rams, Sosa. And I'm going to actually start with the schedule release because I'm a Seahawks fan, so we have that rivalry here going into this, So the other two lads, they're sort of just on the outside looking in, being Giants and Washington fans, so they've got their own little rivalry going on. But it's an interesting schedule that the Rams have this coming year. They start at home against the Bears, and possibly Justin Fields in week 1. You have your bye in week 11. Then after the bye is kind of a tough run to end the year, which includes 3 divisional games against all your division rivals. In there as well are games against the Ravens, the Vikings, and the Green Bay Packers, which may or may not have Aaron Rodgers in the side too. So it's a very difficult end to the year. But what did you make of the upcoming schedule for the Rams?
Yeah, so there were a few things that I pointed out. The first being it's the first year in what feels like forever that the Rams don't actually have to leave the country. They're trying to play games in Mexico City one year, London the next year. Feels like every year they're traveling further than they need to be. So that's the first thing. They're keeping the mileage down. I think they're still 4th most in the NFL, but I know the players definitely don't like, changing time zones and things like that. So that's the first thing. Second thing, you mentioned it. I think the start is going to be very hard. Off the top of my head, I want to say it's Chicago, Indianapolis, and then Tampa Bay. So that's 3 tough games right out, to start, all 2 of which are in the NFC. And then you also mentioned the ending. The ending is going to be really tough too. You got the Ravens, who are, a potential Super Bowl contender. you're finishing off with the San Francisco 49ers, who, last year they weren't great, but they still swept the Rams. And not only that, but I think they're going to be a lot better this year. They're going to be much more healthy. So, they're going to contend for the NFC West. And so, it's a tough schedule. It seems like it always is. But, the Rams have a pretty good team. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out. But like you mentioned, man, the NFC West it's tough, man. Those 6 games are never going to be easy. So whoever gets out of the NFC West is always, a deserved player. You can never count them out. They always feel like they're going to be a Super Bowl contender, whoever gets out, just because it's such a tough road.
So really quickly, I've been asking some of our guests recently to put their money where their mouth is and put their finger on one game this season in the schedule that you're going to guarantee me the Rams win.
Keep in mind, Sosa, you have to buy Fiona a pitcher of beer if you lose this.
All right, if I want to be a coward, they're playing the Houston Texans, and
I accept it. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, so I'd guarantee that one, but there's a little stretch in there where it's not bad. They got the Texans. No offense, they got the Giants as well, which is not the toughest game. They got the Jags.
Yeah,
you're gonna lose that one.
Right. So I'll say the Texans, but it seems kind of like a cop-out.
I feel like you're taking it easy on me. I feel like you wanted to say the Giants, but you said a lot of Texans.
No,
plenty of time to get back at you there, Jake. Don't worry about that. Plenty of time. But interesting. There's only, just looking a quick look at the schedule, I can only see 3 East Coast games as well. So there's not a lot of far traveling, a lot, like you were mentioned, different time zones. So there won't be a lot of sort of early games that the Rams will have to contend with either.
Yeah, it's like a lot of, 4 p.m.s, I guess, if you're talking Eastern time, which is where I'm at and most people are. A couple of primetime games, which is always good. They're trying to usher in SoFi Stadium for the first time to fans, which is going to be, a nice sight to see. And the Rams are one of the better teams, so they're going to get some Sunday night games, some Monday night games, and obviously everyone has to play a Thursday night game, I believe. So also, there's that primetime aspect of it, which I think is kind of enjoyable for fans. It's a little bit tougher for me because I got to record a podcast at 1 a.m. after they finish playing on Sunday. But, it's always enjoyable to watch that one game that everyone's got their eyes on.
Yeah, that Thursday night game is actually against the Seahawks. I think it's in week 5, I believe, or something. I think so. That'll be interesting for sure.
So we're gonna
Jared Goff's no longer there, so there might not be any insane interceptions coming.
This was, and I was going to wait until later on to get into this, but there's a common thread anytime we talk about Jared Goff on this show, and I hate talking about Jared Goff on this show because he could be terrible for 16 games out of the year, but those 2 games against Seattle is when he burns it up and he looks like the NFL MVP, and it always did my head in.
It is kind of strange, because it's the complete opposite for the 49ers. I mean, the guy, he got outdueled by Nick Mullins last year. Like, I don't know how that even happens. The 49ers could barely field the defense at the end of the year, and it wasn't pretty. So no more Jared Goff curses. I think Rams fans are going to be, some are sympathetic, but I think they feel pretty good about, moving on and finally getting into a new chapter.
So are you talking week 5 in as a win or a loss?
That's tough. I think they're going to split. I don't know which one goes which way, but I think they'll split. We'll see which one, which happens. But the pressure might be on the Rams. They can't start 1-2 or 0-3. That fire would start to kind of burn up. Not necessarily that somebody's going to get fired, but a slow start wouldn't look good for Matthew Stafford and them trying to transition into this new offense. So I think the pressure is going to be on the Rams to just kind of gel and try to get that chemistry down real quick. But who knows how long it's going to take. It took Tom Brady last year, longer than anyone would ever expect the GOAT to take. So Stafford's not exactly that. So we'll see. But I think they'll split 1-1. I just don't know which one it'll be.
Very political answer. I like that.
So we're going to get really in-depth now into the Rams. But before we do, I had a kind of a softball question to get you going. And something that stood out to me recently for the Rams was their new rebranding, right? It's one of the most recent rebrandings that we've seen in the NFL in terms of extensively, not just a tweak to a jersey. What I want to get your opinion. Do you think, are you one of the happy fans or one of the more, I kind of liked where we were and this is a bit too modern and not as traditional as we would have hoped?
I'm not like fully invested either way. I'm just more like, man, let's see some good football. But
Okay.
I do also like the jerseys. I'll say that. I don't love every combo, like the blue tops, blue pants. I think look kind of funky, but the bone color I think is unreal. I love that combo. Any combo out of it. And I understand why they did it, right? Because they have all these old heads like myself and people that are older than me that were Rams fans when they were in California in the 70s and 80s and whatever before they moved to St. Louis. They're going to be fans no matter what. So I think they're trying to identify with that new generation, all the younger kids. Mm-hmm. Now that they moved back to California, they want to have something to give them that they can identify with these new Rams teams. And I think, they've done a pretty good job of it. But there's definitely a lot of fans that are pissed off. I will say that.
I guess if you're in LA, you got to have that swagger, right? It's a swagger city. You got to kind of push the brand a little bit.
The one thing I'm not a fan of is, this. It looks like a new hair flick. It looks like maybe it's a California thing. Maybe it's the hair flick over to the side. That's what I'm not a fan of. I don't like the logo.
Yeah, they say that that looks like that Donald Trump swipe thing, but I think it's supposed to be some sort of like wave California, surf up kind of thing. I don't know, but the logo was definitely, unliked by a lot of people. They do have that alternate logo. It's kind of like that Rams head. It looks kind of cartoonish. It looks a lot better. Which they kind of, rotate between. They'll put it at midfield and things like that. But definitely that one got a bad reception. I will say that.
Yeah. Well, like they're challenging as well the Chargers because, the Chargers are pretty well known for their pretty decent jersey combos going with the baby blue and which I do like. And so they definitely have rivals close to home if they're just trying to get like some LA fans especially.
Yeah, and they redid their jerseys too, and my goodness, are they clean? I love them. That powder blue and yellow, you can't go wrong. The Rams got similar thing going, blue and yellow, obviously, but oh man, the Chargers, they might be at the top of my list when it comes to uniforms.
Darren, I have a quick question. I want to ask you this one. This is direct at you. Since we have an LA Rams guest on, I want to challenge you to say at least one good thing about the LA Rams.
One good thing about the LA Rams.
That's pretty easy. Thank you for Shane Waldron. Thank you for Shane Waldron, Gerald Everett as well. But no, one really good thing is, and it's pretty obvious, Aaron Donald. The man's a beast. He's the best defensive player in the league. Might be the best one. That when he finishes up might be the best ever. We'll see. But I can respect the Rams. Obviously they're a rival, but there is still some modicum of respect there for sure. And they have some good players. That just hate the fact that, like I said, Goff would have his MVP games against the Seattle like twice a season, and Seattle will find ways to beat themselves like they did in that playoff game. But let's move on from that because we're not going to talk about that anymore. Let's talk about the draft, because the Rams didn't have a first round pick. Well, like most of the NFC West, to be honest. So their first pick was actually in the second round, and they took Tutu Atwell, the wide receiver, from Louisville. A small, pacey wide receiver, but there were rumors actually that they were looking at taking Dwayne Eskridge instead, before the Seattle Seahawks took him one pick before. Was that actually true, or maybe were they just trying to talk it up a little bit?
It sounds like it was true. There's not solidified. I can't say that I would put my life on it, but it does sound like it was going to be Dwayne Eskridge, and I'm not surprised because I was tracking who the Rams met with pre-draft, and oftentimes out of the 30 players that you get to meet with, they're picking 3, 4, upwards of 5 players sometimes, and Dwayne Eskridge was one of those guys, and so was Tutu Atwell. And so I think when Eskridge went one pick before, they kind of got nervous, and they might have had like a re-strategizing plan there where Tutu Atwell was a reach by a lot of people's opinion, and they just seen the guy that they wanted go one pick before them. So I think they kind of said, it's not worth trading back. You might get a 3rd round pick, a 4th round pick, whatever it is. Let's just stay put. Let's take our guy. And so I think that it was Eskridge. I think it was going to be, but at the end of the day, like you said, they both quick receivers. They're both fast, and I think that trying to get more explosive this offseason was something that they really, really wanted to do. And so Tutu Atwell still does fit that mold there.
I was hoping he wouldn't say that it was a reach for Tutu Atwell because I picked him in my Dynasty League, so I'm really hoping he is not a reach.
I like his talent. The only issue is and it is a dynasty league, which is good because you obviously don't need him necessarily this year. But, this year I think it's going to be just more gadget style usage, a lot of jet sweeps, wide receiver screens, maybe a few shots down the field, and definitely that punt returner role. You want to try to get a guy as explosive he is, as many touches as you can per game. But you look at all the other receivers, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Deshaun Jackson, there's a logjam there. So I don't expect to see much from him, not this season. But the Rams do a really good job of drafting guys in a given year, and then a year or two down the line, they're sort of prepped for, guys that are going to hit the market. And you look at Deshaun Jackson, he's on a 1-year contract. So even coming out, when he came out of Cal, I want to say it was like 2008 at this point, he was known to be a similar style receiver. He's like 170 pounds, really, really light. A lot of people said he wouldn't be able to keep up in the NFL. And so I think they kind of had that plan. Let's get Deshaun Jackson in the building, bring that explosiveness. Let's get this guy behind him, give him a chance to learn, after one of the best deep threats of all time. And so I think that was the plan. And, you said dynasty, so you don't need him this year, which is good because I don't expect much this year. But I think in a year or two down the line, he's definitely going to be the guy when it comes to, deep threats for the Rams.
Yeah, and elsewhere in the draft, they did solidify a few positions, especially on the defensive line, sort of backing up Aaron Donald there with the likes of, Bobby Brown to play defensive tackle. And then you've got, where can I see that? Sorry, Ernest Brown as well, to play on the edge, as well as some quarterbacks or cornerbacks, I should say, to help with the loss of Troy Hill. But one other person that you lost, I think, probably a big one, was it Josh Johnson, who went to the Cleveland Browns. How big of a loss is he going to be now this coming year?
I think he's going to be big. I think the Rams, and like I just said a second ago, they do a good job of planning for things ahead. And so you look back to last year, they drafted Terrell Burgess out of Utah in the 3rd round, who I loved coming out. They drafted Jordan Fuller out of Ohio State in the 6th round. And, the year prior, they drafted Taylor Rapp in the 2nd round out of Washington. They drafted Nick Scott in the 7th round. So they do a really, really good job of, planning ahead. So I do think they're going to be able to mitigate that loss pretty decently because they got a lot of talent there still. But, you look at John Johnson, and the guy was an elite safety last year. There's no other way to cut it. He was the guy that lined up everyone on defense. He had the green sticker on his helmet. He was getting all the play calls in. Not only that, but he's versatile. And he's a guy that the Rams like to do a lot of pre-snap looks and then, rotating in different looks post-snap to try and confuse quarterbacks. And John Johnson was a big reason why they were, able to do that with the versatility that he had. So I think they definitely will feel that loss to some degree, especially in the leadership aspect too. But they did do a good job of getting a lot of talent in that safety room. So they should be able to mitigate it, I think. But definitely a very, very good player that the Cleveland Browns got.
Elsewhere, looking at the defense as a whole, you've lost your defensive coordinator, Brandon Staley, going over to be the head coach of the Chargers. Now, Raheem Morris is the new defensive coordinator after he spent his time as the DC with the Falcons and then for a brief period as the interim head coach. What did you make of the appointment of Morris in as the defensive coordinator, despite the fact that his history of coaching shows that he's actually worked on the offense and the defensive side of the ball too? So would you sort of prefer that, where someone has knowledge of both sides of the ball, or would you prefer your defensive coordinator to, have a knowledge of the side that he's obviously the coordinator of, being the defense?
That's a good question. I never thought about that. I guess, it is good to have multiple perspectives, which, like you said, Raheem Morris does. I think it's going to be hard to replace Brandon Staley just because he was so good. And, there's only half the battle that people look at, which is game planning, right? You got to go into a game with a good game plan. Otherwise, you're going to be toast. But that's only half the battle. The other half the battle is being able to adjust in game and being able to call the right plays at the right time, because at the end of the day, it's just a chess match between offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators. And, they're going to call certain plays that are going to test you out and feel you out and see what you run in response, and then call it again later in the game to try and get you. So I think that's one of the biggest aspects that I kind of not necessarily worry about, but I'm concerned about, or I'm intrigued to see how it works out. How can he adjust? What kind of system is he going to run? Him and Sean McVay go way back in time. I think they were in Tampa together many, many years ago. They were in Washington together nearly a decade ago. So they're clear, they got a clear friendship there. They got a good friendship. And obviously he felt good about hiring him. So, I don't know that you can have a guy that's ever going to be as good as Brandon Staley was last year. They were the number one defense in pretty much every metric you can look at. But at the same time, I think Raheem Morris has a lot of experience. He's a guy that I think players like to, play for. And I think it's going to be interesting to see. He's still got a lot of talent there, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. So you got to lean on those stars and put guys in positions to succeed. But it's definitely one of the more intriguing storylines, I think, going for the Rams, going into the season.
Yeah, and sort of one area that, if there is maybe a weakness on that defense, which, like you said, was number 1 overall last year, was absolutely fantastic, is possibly the linebacking position. Because just looking at the depth chart here now, sort of they have the likes of Kenny Young and Mika Kaiser down as probably the starters. Like, are you happy with those two going forward being your starting linebackers next year, or do you think maybe there's some areas or somewhere that they can improve on?
Those were the starters last year. I don't know that they will be going into this year. I think they're going to give Ernest Jones, the third-round pick that they picked out of South Carolina, every chance to start. They really like him from a head-up approach in terms of his IQ, his football acumen, lining guys up. I'm sure they value that kind of stuff. So I think they're going to give him the shot. And next to him last year was supposed to be Traven Howard, a former safety out of TCU, a 7th-round pick. But he got injured in, training camp. There wasn't a real training camp, or there was to some degree. He got injured, lost the whole season, so he obviously couldn't play. I think they're going to give him every shot to start this season too. So I'm expecting it to be Ernest Jones and Traven Howard. That's just a guess at this point. But if that's a duo, I think that's significantly better than what they had last year. Still not one of the better ones in the league for sure. Traven Howard is much more coverage-based and coverage-centric. He's a lot quicker of a mover. Whereas Ernest Jones, he's really bad in coverage, but he's good at taking guys on, taking on blocks, playing in the box, and trying to play the run. So they got, a couple of bodies there. I think it's going to be one of the more intriguing battles in training camp for sure. I wouldn't be shocked to see it go in any direction. I think there's 4 or 5 guys that could ultimately start going into the season, but I'm expecting it to be Traven Howard and Ernest Jones right now.
So we're going to flip the script on you now and look at the opposite side of the ball, go to the offense. Obviously, the massive news story for the Rams on the offseason was getting rid of Jared Goff, bringing in Matthew Stafford. We talked a little bit in one of our new shows about whether we thought teams were going to improve or take a decline when the new quarterbacks come in. And I just want to get your opinion on whether you think Matthew Stafford is going to improve. Obviously, Jared Goff got to 10 wins last season. Do you think Stafford can improve on that total, or are you going to give him a couple of years or maybe just one season to get his legs underneath him before you expect big numbers out of him?
I'm expecting a quick transition because this is a guy who's played for, 12 years now. He's got a lot of experience, played for a lot of head coaches, a lot of different systems, a lot of offensive lines and receivers. So a guy that, the Rams made a play for. They paid a lot. We'll say that, 2 first-round picks, Jared Goff, some other stuff. So it cost him a lot. And I expect, him to have the best best season of his career, because this is the best coach that he's ever played for by far, the best game planner, best schemer. I think it's probably the best receivers in totality that he's ever played with. Probably the best defense that he's ever played with. He's, wasn't given much in Detroit. I think he only had, over the course of his 12 years there, I think he only had 9 or 11 games. I can't remember. It's 9 or 11 games in his entire career there with a 100-yard rusher. So, that is horrible. That's 1 per year. So not exactly what he's going to get in LA. He's got Cam Akers. He's got Darrell Henderson, a very good running game too. So, I'm expecting it to be a quick transition. I think it's going to be a career year for him. I think he's going to be an improvement over Jared Goff too. And I think it's going to kind of leak into the rest of their offense. I think the passing game is going to be more productive. I think the running game by virtue will be more productive because teams are not going to be able to stack the box as much. And so I do expect them to, pass the 10-win mark. Depending on injuries, obviously, it's going to be very variable there. But in my opinion, I'm probably, ballparking it somewhere between 11 and 13 wins, depending on how quick they can gel, how quick they can get the chemistry down, and obviously the injury situation too.
You spoke about Sean McVay there. Obviously, he's hot property at the moment in the NFL. Everyone wants someone off his coaching tree to be involved in their staff at the moment. How do you see that transition happening with Stafford? Is McVay going to tweak his system to fit the quarterback that he has, or is he going to coach Stafford up to fit in the system that he is currently running? Do you expect them to look quite similar or completely different next season?
And that's probably the most interesting question for me going into this season is, what are we going to see? Because when Sean McVay came to town 2017, the only quarterback he's known in LA has basically been Jared Goff. Like, this is a guy who's been very healthy, mind you. He's not missing games either. Like, he missed one game, and it was the last game of his career there when John Wolford took over when he got hurt and broke his thumb. Like, I don't know what to expect. I think it's going to be a little bit of what we've seen in 2018. You're going to see, Stafford go under center a little bit and have that heavy play action game that, rolling out far left, far right, bootleg type of stuff. That wide zone running game, things like that. But at the same time, I think he's a lot more advanced when it comes to reading defenses, being able to get in a shotgun, going 5 wide. So, than Jared Goff was. And that was something that Sean McVay sort of trended more towards this, past season and things like that. So I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen. I think it's going to be a mix of like 2018 when they were at their best and, this past season where they can kind of go into gun a little bit more. But one thing I do expect to change quite a bit is that I think they're just going to open up the playbook more because Stafford just has less limitations, and I think he's willing to push the ball deep, unlike any other quarterback in the NFL right now. I mean, maybe only Jameis Winston does it like he does it. So that's something that Jared Goff refused to do last year. I don't know what the reason was, just did not throw the ball deep. So I think it's going to look a little bit different, but at the same time, I think Sean McVay is going to be smart enough to know that he's got a legitimate veteran on his hands here, and he can really open up the playbook and get creative.
And with Stafford especially, is there any how can I say? Is there any sort of cause for alarm, or is there any potential issues with injuries? He has taken a bit of a beating there with the Lions the last couple of years. Now he missed half the season last season with, not last season, 2019, I should say, with the Lions. And last season he was carrying a pretty severe back injury there too at certain points. So is there a bit of concern there with his sort of, longevity sort of for the whole year, being able to play every game?
I don't think there is when it comes to the Rams or when it comes to most Rams fans, but for me, there definitely is. You look at the O-line, by far the weakest part of the offense, in my opinion. They didn't invest into it at all. They lost the center. They're sliding their right guard from last year, Austin Corbett, to center now, so that's a new position for him. We don't know how he's going to translate. They're starting a new right guard for the first time in his career, former third-round pick Bobby Evans, who used to play left tackle, so that's quite a big transition for him. I don't know what he's going to play like, so that's 2 question marks on the O-line. And like you said, Stafford's been a guy that's taken a lot of punishment. I mean, even last year, I think he had like 5 injuries. His wrist, his thumb, his elbow. There was multiple injuries where, he was getting knocked out of games left, right, and center. So I think it is a concern, but at the same time, you kind of made your bed. Now you got to lay in it. And so they didn't invest in that O-line. I guess they feel confident with what they're putting out there. And that's, they're just going to have to hold up as best as they can. But I do think there is some slight concern for sure.
And so let's just take it back to the Matt Stafford, Jared Goff trade. On the day the trade came, and you obviously had heard about it, there was a lot of news that the trade details started leaking in. Were you hoping a little less was given away to acquire Matt Stafford, or were you happy to get away from Jared Goff and his contract that the Rams had given him?
Yeah, at that time, I was actually taking a nap, which is kind of funny. And I had literally just woken up and looked at my phone. I'm like, oh, Lord, I have 74 notifications. What happened? And yeah, of course, the biggest trade of the century for us. So I feel like it was good, in terms of the upgrade. I think, they got a clear-cut upgrade, in my opinion. And, you talk about the first-round picks, and they are first-round picks. They're worth something, a lot, actually. But the Rams are a team that's always made the playoffs. So we're talking about, a pick that's going to be 25 through 32, somewhere in that range. We're not talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars number 1 overall. So you got to factor that in too. You got to factor in the fact, like you said, Jared Goff's contract, that obviously took some, assets that needed to be included because that was a big contract that probably nobody wanted to take on. At the time, I was a little bit disappointed because, this is before the whole Deshaun Watson stuff, and we knew Deshaun Watson wanted out at that point in time. So, the Rams called Green Bay about Aaron Rodgers. They called Houston about Deshaun Watson. And it felt like, they had to settle almost for the third best option, which was still a tremendous option. But at the time, I feel like the Rams are that kind of team that, man, they go big or they go home. And so I was kind of hoping for like a Deshaun Watson play, but it was expensive. But at the end of the day, I think, they made their team a lot better. And at the end of the day, you don't know what's going to come of these first-round picks. And you look at the Jaguars, they, had the 2 first-round picks from the Rams from the Jalen Ramsey trade. And the 2 players they came away with, I don't think many people would take those guys over the best corner in football. So they got a lot better. It did cost a lot, and that's really just where we're at.
Well, can I ask?
Go on. I've been outspoken before on Jared Goff, and I was never a huge fan of him. I just never thought he had maybe he was just lacking in the IQ part of it for the game. Obviously, I think that kind of transcends the Rams into nearly a Super Bowl. Like, they're always kind of a Super Bowl contender, but this puts them into serious contention for the Super Bowl. Do you think that has shot them up there, or do you think they're kind of always around there?
I think it did. You look back to last year, I thought they were good. I didn't think they were Super Bowl contenders. You look back to 2019, definitely not Super Bowl contenders. That was the one year they missed the playoffs. 2018, they were Super Bowl contenders. That team was stacked, and they made it there. But I do think that it does vault them into that category. And, Jared Goff is just a guy that you don't know what you're getting. That was the issue. So inconsistent when the pocket's clean and things are good. He could look like the best quarterback in the NFL. And when he's pressured and he's got, 5-6 guys coming at him, he can look like the worst quarterback in the league. So too much variance there. I do think it vaults him into, the Super Bowl talk at least, or at least one of the best teams in the NFC.
Yeah, actually, this is interesting because Jake asked about what you gave up to get Stafford, and we talked a bit of the concerns with his injury as well. Division rival 49ers gave up a treasure chest load of picks as well, including first rounders for their pick number 3, effectively giving up a treasure chest for Trey Lance. If you had your choice, would you rather do what you did with the Rams and got Stafford, or would you have liked them, maybe considering the draft class that we had this year? Wouldn't have had them in Lance if you preferred Fields or Mac Jones instead. You could pick them. Would you prefer them to go use those picks on someone in the draft?
Well, that is a good question. All right, that is a really good question. That is a hard one to answer. It's easy for me to say because my job's not on the line, so if things don't work out, I'm a little bit more risky. So I might go with the draft pick because I think when you factor in the idea that you get a Trey Lance or you get a Justin Fields, and you're getting, $20-25 million in cap space on top of that per year. So you're talking a quarterback that may or may not be as good. We don't know. It's a question mark. But you're also talking about, 2 potentially elite players in addition with that salary cap space. So I probably would have went quarterback, but I don't think the Rams could have. They're way too invested right now in the Super Bowl window. They traded all these picks for the Jalen Ramseys and all these guys, the Brandon Cookses, and they had to go with the quarterback. That was a veteran that can get them there right now because that window is open right now. And if you take a Fields or you take a Lance, you might not be ready to be a Super Bowl contender for, 2 years. And they can't afford that right now. So I think they had to do it.
Well, that's the other thing as well, right? Even if Stafford plays out of his skin and is the quarterback that you hope he is, he's already been in the league 12 years. Like, you might have him 4 more, 6 years if you're really, really lucky. Whereas if you hit, obviously we don't know how these rookies are going to pan out, but if you hit on a Stafford level rookie, you get him for all those 12 years, maybe even 18 years. So it's a really difficult decision, I think, to go whether you go draft or a proven commodity in the NFL.
Yeah, and you get that guy on a 5-year rookie contract. He's going to be making, $5 million a year versus Matt Ryan, who's making $45 million. That's a big difference. You could do a lot with $40 million, and the Rams have some salary cap issues. That's why they lost a lot of good players in free agency. So, I mean, it's an amazing question, and I feel like we could talk about it all day. It's so hard to really pick your side, and we don't know what's going to be the right answer until we look back, in a year or two. But I think they feel really good about what they have right now.
Yeah, and I think I sort of agree with you there, Sosa, in terms of you have to evaluate where your team is before making that decision. If you are in this win now mode, yeah, you do have to go for the Stafford. If you were one of those that you could say, right, we'll give it 2 years, we'll use that extra space and our cap room, and we'll build a team nicely in certain areas, like you were mentioning, maybe build up the O-line a little more, invest a bit more into that. But yeah, I think that where the Rams are, I think it's definitely the right option that they've gone for Stafford in this case, as much as it pains me to say that for sure. But listen, we're going to wrap it up here. Before we let you go, where can people find your show and your socials?
Yeah, so you can find my writing. I write about fantasy football at PFF. You can find the Locked On Rams podcast pretty much anywhere where you can get podcasts. I'm hosting 5 episodes there a week, so we're going strong. And you can find me on Twitter at QB's MEP.
Excellent stuff. Listen, Sosa, it's been so great to have you on. We've had a great chat with you today. We hopefully will speak to you again in the near future, if not before the season starts, definitely at some point during it.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys for having me, man. Cheers.
No problem at all. No problem at all. And guys, like I said, that is where we're going to wrap up this show today. Before we go, if you haven't already and you are watching us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the Under Center podcast. That's where you'll find our shows each and every time we upload a brand new show. Also, like I said, we upload bite-sized highlights of this show too, if you don't have the time to watch the full show. If you prefer the audio side of things, you want to listen to us on the go to wherever you get your podcast. Just search Under Center Podcast. That's where you'll find us. That's where you'll get all of our shows too. Our socials, facebook.com/undercenterpod, Twitter, Instagram, the exact same, @undercenterpod. Make sure, if you haven't, please, if you can, follow us. Like it says, we're on the quest for 1,000 before week 1 of the regular season. But that is all the time we have for this week. We'll be back soon with another podcast, probably finishing off our off-season series. But until then, stay safe and we'll see you soon.